I had a pleasure to have a talk with Ringo. Ürgo is one of the early engineers in TransferWise, or now called Wise. Ürgo was one of the first 12, let's say, and he has got a lot of insights into product engineering topics specifically. So with Ürgo, we talked about everything started from his personal journey, how he got into software engineering. Then he went into the agency work, where he worked there for 6 years or more, and how he ended up to actually transitioning to a product company where the company builds its own product. And his first choice laid down on Wise. It was a pretty good choice because Wise became hugely successful, and partly also probably because of Ürgo's efforts, as he literally built Wise, engineering in Wise, together with other early engineers. And we were talking about what it means to be a product engineer, which values and principles are important for product engineering, how it relates to the organizational structures in the company, and what are the dynamics when the company matures. I also asked Ürgo about his own values and principles and what skills and knowledge that he acquired he considers essential. And last but not least, we touched on domain-driven design. And one thing I really liked what Ürgo brought out is the importance of creating metaphors in domain-driven design and how it relates, let's say, to ubiquitous language, and how putting concepts and logic and cognitive load into metaphors actually makes your life easier and the whole company's life easier, because now you suddenly simplified some complex topic into few terms, which you all agree what they mean, so that you can build even more complex things on top of it. And I really liked also Ürgo's insights on being active engineer, not passive engineer. This again ties back to being a product engineer, where you solve a problem end to end, and where you really understand what problems you're solving for your users, for your customers. And yeah, I really enjoyed talking to Ürgo. In fact, I used to work with him in Wise, and he was a big inspiration for me in the early days in the early days when I joined Wise. I didn't join as early as him. I joined in 2015, but still I learned a lot from him. I got exposed to domain-driven design because of Ürgo. So I'm grateful for his impact on my own career. And I hope you will enjoy this conversation too. So now let's get to the podcast. And one more thing, I have to apologize for the microphone recording quality during this episode. The next ones will be much better. I was not careful enough to use the wrong wire for this Rode wireless go-to microphones. I used the wrong wire for the receiver to connect it to iPhone. So the whole episode was recorded on the iPhone, but I did apply some AI processing and the audio cleaning to the recording. So I hope it made it a little bit better. Again, just saying that the next episodes will have much better recording. It's the first episode. So thanks for taking a leap of faith with me. I'm actually very grateful because yeah, it's cool. So yeah, I thought what topic to discuss with you, and I thought the cool topic would be product engineering, because we both worked in Wise, and Wise has a famous culture of product engineering, and I joined Wise as junior engineer, and you were always like a person I looked up to because I saw how you worked, and how you worked also seemed to be very mature and different from other people to me. Mm. But before we go to Wise and product engineering, I thought that actually would be interesting if you can tell actually, not only the listeners, but also me, I'm curious myself about yourself, about your journey in software engineering, and maybe all the way back to how you started to code and how you got exposed to coding and software engineering. So
yeah, I'm happy to do that. Actually, it's interesting that so when I was thinking where to go in university, like which what should I study? Actually, I wasn't sure that I should go into some kind of like computer engineering or something like that. So I thought, okay, maybe either software engineering or economics, basically, were two options for me. And because before university, actually, at school I did some coding, but really was not a big fan of that. Actually, I was more like I thought I would want to be like a business analyst. Because at the time, somehow for me, it felt like really cool. Like system analyst guy, you don't have to do the coding, which is like something that seemed like kind of annoying thing. But you do like you say how things should work and stuff. You're like an important person. And then later actually, so I went into university to systems engineering. System engineering. It was also basically I chose because systems. There was like computer. Like programming basically, and then there was like this system engineering, which systems engineering seemed okay. It's like bigger thing. It's like systems, not just writing code or programming. Okay, so there was a program called systems engineering, and how did they market themselves? Like it was all encompassing. It's like so the computer and systems engineering. Yeah. Okay. But actually, of course, later, I think when I was on like, I don't know, 2 years, I think, in there already, then I realized actually what I signed up for. Actually, there was like either it's like real-time systems or there were like digital systems, like more hardware, closer to the hardware. That was actually what I kind of enrolled in. But yeah, I mean, so basically, like during university, when I started to work, then I just happened to join one company which was doing some custom software. Actually, they had products, lots of products. It was still this time when one guy could develop the whole product. Right. It was pretty cool. So we used Visual Fox Pro. I think it's not used anymore, but it was this cool thing. And then initially it was like, okay, I have to do this coding, but I wasn't really very passionate about it. It was during your university years, right? It was at the end of my university. Yeah, I think like third year or fourth year or something like that. But then at one point I discovered this thing called patterns. Like design patterns? Design patterns. Yes. And then I realized that, oh shit, so this is not just about coding, but it's also there's something more. It's coding in a nice way, so it's readable, and then there's these patterns, and this somehow really, it was very like big revelation for me that okay, there's these patterns, and it really drew me in, and I think it was like the first software engineering book that I bought also. So this was the first book Design Patterns transformed your life. Yes, it was like a Bible for me. I was reading it. It's all so cool. There's these descriptions of things. I want to use them in my code as well and stuff like. So that it was only then basically that I realized, okay, this software engineering is actually a pretty cool thing. That I want to do. Which year was it, by the way? More or less. Yeah, so I think it was like third or fourth year. Or you mean in like absolute terms? Absolute terms. So it was 90s? Like beginning of 2000s. Beginning of 2000. Yeah, it was. I think it was this time basically where this like e-commerce bubble had just burst. Yeah. But there was still like, I think we were still like kind of having some dreams. We could do our own startup. It seemed so easy that because everybody still were kind of doing it, although it was already like ending. But yeah, so it was like Agile was obviously around already, but it was this cool thing. I also was reading about this Agile manifesto and then trying to incorporate this Agile stuff into our work.
Right, so reading Agile manifesto, you mean reading actually the original one, right?
Yeah, like I was that one, and then I was a big fan. Was this process called feature-driven development.
Who initiated it, by the way?
I don't remember who was this. Peter Code, I think. I think he was like later he switched into like getting like airplane pilots.
Okay, so he was one of pioneer because I haven't heard of him. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, in the beginning, it is 2000s. I think it was one of those processes. I don't know how, if it probably XP was the most popular, widely known one, but it's FTP.
Have you read the XP book, Extreme Programming?
Yeah, I did.
How did it affect you? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, of course, but I think I was like reading at many different things at the time. So XP, I don't know if XP was my first kind of introduction to Agile. So there was a lot of like Alistair Cockburn, these crystal methods, and all these different approaches. So in that sense, I guess for me, XP was cool, but it was just one option kind of this family. And so you read the Goff patterns. It affected you. You were still at this job, right? Building this product. Yeah. What happened next in your career? So, I mean, so we were building this product, but later, basically, when I finished university, then I joined a software agency, actually. So, because I wanted to try Java. Okay. It was basically like. Wait, what did you do before? So I did this Visual Fox Pro thing. Okay. Which was a language of its own, actually. Right. I didn't even know it existed. It was like a cool thing. It didn't have any support for tests, for example. Okay. So I invented my own kind of unit testing framework. Oh, really? Wow. Unit, kind of. It was. You were like Kent Beck. It was nice because you could invent lots of things because they were not there, and that even at the time it was not the most popular language. Yeah. So you could just like copy things from other languages and bring it in as like a pioneer. That was kind of the cool. But then, I was checking, okay, do I want to switch to Java or .NET? And then I was reading books from both about like, at the time it was like, I think Visual Basic .NET was also really popular, not so much C#, I didn't check that so much. And then I decided like, I'm going to choose Java. I don't think there was much deep thought in there, but I just, let's try Java. And so I wanted to try Java, so I joined this agency. And so then I was doing this outsourcing work for many years. Yeah, I think it was like 6 years or something. 6 years. Quite a long time as well. Would I be correct to guess that 6 years in agency was actually quite important because it exposed you to a lot of different technology and customers and use cases? Or how would you describe the impact it made in your career to work in the agency versus, let's say, just working on one startup, right? Where you get a little bit repetitive things and one technology. So can you compare that experience? Yes, I think that is definitely in terms of like trying out different things. Then agency setup is like good in that sense because you have these smaller projects. So every project comes in, and then obviously you want to kind of try the new thing there, which I think for customers is not always the best thing. But this agency will kind of, there's a little bit of this kind of, let's try out some new things here. So yes, you can get to try lots of things, and of course you get to see different kinds of organizations as well, and different setups. So in that sense, it kind of is, it's kind of nice course that you get to see lots of different things. But the downside is, which is also the reason why I wanted to leave this agency, was that you never go very deep into anything. You don't live long enough with your code base or to understand the dynamics of how it will affect you later on. So there's, in this sense, there's limited growth. Right? And it's also, I mean, those setups were always so that, okay, here's like these requirements that you need to do. You deliver the stuff, and then the project is done, and then, okay, here's the package, here you are. And you never got to see what actually happens with the product, how users are using it, what are the problems,
Right.
does it even solve some problems or not?
Mm-hmm.
So
you're very detached from product and business. You're just kind of given the scope already, even.
yes,
And, more or less.
yes.
And then you grew a little bit, but within this boundary
Yeah.
of what was given to you,
It's
and
like,
nothing more.
yeah, it's like project based. Yeah?
Project
So you
based.
do a project and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that's a fair analysis, and there are pros and cons. Yeah. And you said so it motivated you to leave, right?
yes.
What did you do after that?
So I mean, so after that, I was just like, okay, so what are the product companies in Estonia?
Mhm.
Yeah, and then
Which year was it when you were in this?
so that was
deciding-
like 2000, I don't know, like 13 or something.
Ah, right.
So it was basically at the time when I was like, oh, that's where I joined.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because there were not actually that many options back then, because there were not so many product companies in Estonia. Everybody was doing outsourcing mostly, but yeah.
So from the first shot, you found a needle in the haystack.
Yeah,
the best and most successful, one of the best and most successful companies in Europe from the first shot.
Yep, it was kind of accidental. Yeah,
that's very good choice and thinking. But actually, let's talk a little bit about it, because that's a very good topic. How to search and choose a company. And let's say you want to join a product company, right? What criteria are you looking for? So what is important for you when you, let's say, vet the company? Do you want to join this? Do you want to join that? How is the process looking for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's very different from what it was back then, what it would be now.
Yeah.
When you have more choice. Yeah. But even then, I think there's like, yeah, obviously you have this different criteria. You have like, okay, what's the product? Like, do I kind of connect with the product? Do I, or is it something that I would rather not want to contribute to, even if it's like some gambling or something like that, for example, or
then something that doesn't align with your personal
yes values. So that is like one thing. Then there's obviously there's like the team, the people, the culture. Like, does that kind of that be something that fits for me?
What attracted you in Wise culture? Because I mean, from the outsider perspective, let's say, and who did you have interviews with? Just curious, who got you in Wise?
Back then, I remember I had one with Bogdan.
Okay.
I knew Alvar before, so which was also actually, he was one reason why I even my Wise actually appeared on my radar.
Right. Because Alvar was already in the Wise.
Yes. Yeah. Because I had worked with him together with him on Telia. And I really liked him. He was like someone I looked up to. And then when I heard he left Wise, then I think that was a big reason actually why I was also like started to be more interested.
Wise?
Yeah. So why I started to be more interested in that company.
May I ask what qualities got you inspired when you worked with Alvar together, or what made you think like, okay, this is a person I want to work with?
Yeah.
This is both like on a personal level, right? But also on a kind of, it's an important question, right? What qualities we like in people we consider good colleagues we want to work with, either in this company or in the future.
Yeah. So
just as a small detail.
Yeah, I think so. So at the time, I think he was working in this code-born company, which in terms of like culture and qualities was for me as a kind of this outsourcing company. It's also it's kind of ideal in many ways. I think, at least looking at it from the outside, it seemed they really valued highly all this like agile principles and this craftsmanship stuff. And somehow they were able to actually also sell it to companies, which was the other thing, which I found really cool, because you can find that these things are really important, but then you can't sell, and then it's like not really that useful.
And Albert was actually working there as engineer, right?
Yes, as an engineer.
Actually contributing.
So we were kind of like working together, sort of on the same umbrella project.
But under different consultancies.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think it was like there were different kind of components that we were working on, but we had at least once a week one joint meeting. And yeah, I remember there was specifically there was like one meeting I think where there was some kind of like bit of a mess up that had happened had caused some problems in production, and then I was really impressed how Alvar defended his company there and to the customer basically, like saying like, you know, not just like defend like, oh no, it's not our fault, but it's like he was owning the failure, but also at the same time kind of putting it more in a kind of trying to emphasize that it's also like a positive thing that, okay, yes, we failed, but we don't want to kind of now just focus on finding a scapegoat or like, so for me, it was really,
right.
I really
blameless post-mortem, right?
Yeah, basically it's kind of doing that, even though I think the customers was really trying to blame them because then they would have been able to, I think, get some like fixing for free or something like that. Yeah. Because
got it.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. And also for the listeners who don't know, so yeah, Codeborn, I think is the first company, a consultancy company in Estonia, which pretty much embraced extreme programming natively, right? So they pair program all the time, or like 95% of the time. And I know it as well because when I worked in Starship Technologies, we also had them as contractors, and I did work personally with Anton Case, for example. And it affected also me a lot because I really liked our collaboration and everything. So it was a very cool experience. And yeah, as you said, that they are able to sell it to the company. That's really cool. And again, just want to emphasize, pair programming is not a silver bullet, but it's still a very powerful tool. And let's say Codeborn is a company who knows how to use this tool to its fullest potential. I would describe it like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if we like, maybe if we go to the spare program,
let's go. Yeah.
There was like when I was in this agency, then we actually in some projects we really tried to experiment with this pair programming as well. So we kind of said, okay, we're gonna do pair programming, and then we kind of do also switching the pairs regularly. So we had, I think, different approaches. We had like half a day with one person, and then the other half day with the other person. We had like schedules and stuff, and it was really, we kind of tried to make it really like how it should be.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that, I mean, to kind of expose the end result, we kind of gave up on it eventually. But I think this, but at least I got away from it. So he said, yes, if you do pair programming, what happens? I think you get better code quality. You get better this kind of shared ownership, shared knowledge within the team. But the important thing is also switching pairs. If you don't, if you just do this pair programming where, I don't know, for like a month there's one pair and there's another pair next to them, then it might be actually worse, because then within the pair you have a lot of knowledge sharing, a lot of discussion, but across the pairs, not so much, even less than if you would have everybody individually.
It creates these pockets of knowledge,
yes,
right?
Pockets of knowledge, yes. But also why we actually also, I mean, I think it's also, of course, it's very kind of hard. It's very intense, this kind of pair programming.
It is. It's energy intensive, right?
Energy intensive, and maybe we didn't do it also correct. I think, I don't know, maybe you need to have some kind of times when you don't do it or whatever, when you relax. But yeah, then also we saw that it takes actually more time still. At least if you're looking at it in a kind of relatively short time horizon, like if your project, like, I don't know, 2 to 3 months, with pair programming within that time, it seemed that actually you would, yes, you get all these benefits, you get better code and you get better knowledge sharing, but if it's still a relatively short project, it's kind of hard to say if it pays off. So.
That's a fair analysis, and I really like that you brought up pair programming, and I can reflect maybe on my experience right now in Pactum. So yeah, for listeners who don't know, so in Pactum I'm a platform engineering lead, and well, our team right now is recently we had a new joiner, Anton, so now we are 6 engineers, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we work is actually we pair on epics, we call them epics, but we try to scope epics to 1 to 2 weeks maximum. Let's say ideally 1 week. That would be ideal.
Okay.
Of course, it's an estimate, and we treat estimates as estimates. They're uncertain, or let's say they have a range of uncertainty, and we don't get too fixated on estimates. But more or less, the ballpark should be 1 week. It shouldn't be a 1 month epic. And then what we do, we always assign a pair to this epic, but let's say semi-randomly. So that, again, we wouldn't have these local pockets of knowledge, right, to avoid knowledge isolation.
Yeah.
And then inside this pair, when they work on some epic, just to give an example, like recently we had to migrate Auth0 from hooks to actions. This was like their thing, and it was like a small epic. And 2 guys from our team, Martin and Evgeny, they paired on it together. And the cool concept that I like is that we treat pair programming as just one tool that the pair decides to use or not to use. But the pair, let's say the concept is that the pair's goal is to solve the epic, right? And they decide among themselves, between themselves, how do they work. They can pair program, they can divide tasks, and it's up to them. And it's up to them to, groom it. I mean, grooming is aligning the scope, of course, it's team effort, but they can still like tactically decide what to do, how to do. And in each epic, we have an epic owner. And again, for epic owner, we also rotate. So we all exercise leadership, right? Making calls, making decisions, because that's where the growth comes in. And inside epic, we what we call pair, but pair is not pair programming per se. It's just one tool. But the people solve problems together. And what's cool then, let's say, imagine, and why it's important, or why I wanted to mention this, pair programming is a little bit hard to implement when you have people working remotely. But what we have now, for example, Martin in our team, he works in Latvia, and Evgeny is in Estonia. But now they both paired on this topic, right? So they can optimize their work to decide, okay, let's maybe agree on interfaces, and I'll do this part, you'll do this part, and we have a sync call together. And when they review each other code, PRs, they both share the context. So they are interested to keep the to keep the waiting time of PR reviews as short as possible. And the cool thing is that they share the context. And so just to finish this story with epics, and on this particular example, so Martin and Evgeny, they finished epic, and they finished this Auth0 migration. And then I asked them one thing. I said also, could you please write a 1-pager documentation on new Auth0 flow so that you would kind of knowledge share your knowledge to other team members? And they did that. And that's it. In 1 week, 1 week and a half, the epic was finished. And we moved on with other things. And the important thing, though, now is not to invoke a reinforcing loop so that, let's say they worked on authentication topic, right? It's important not to put them back both into this topic later on, but to rotate people, and any new authentication topics comes in, it shouldn't be Martin and Evgeny, right? It could be anyone from the team, because again, not to create the pockets of knowledge. But yeah, I don't know. I just decided to share this.
That makes sense. Yeah, I for me also actually, like the pair program itself is like really like hardcore kind of two people sitting next to each other and really like kind of working right together. It's one extreme, but I guess like I also like really sharing this context, and like having multiple people work towards the same goal, within the same
for a limited time, right?
Bigger task. I think that's really cool. That works.
I think why it's also cool, and I think you would agree, because then you actually have a person or people who you can actually discuss problems and solutions deeply, right? You can brainstorm together, and it doesn't matter. It can be video call, can be in the whiteboard if it's physically in the office, but you have a person who you can discuss things and have like a sparring partner, right? Who can challenge your ideas. And I think this is why the working in solo is so lonely and dangerous and has a lot of psychological pressure. Is because you have a deadline looming, let's say, or you have expectations on you. You're working on something, let's say, for a month or 2 months, and the problem is you don't even have anyone to talk about it. And on stand-ups, no one understands what you're solving, and that's really, I think, psychologically really hard.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had such experience of, because I did have in my career experience of working on some topics alone for a long time. And honestly, I wouldn't want to repeat that. I mean, of course, there are exceptions. Let's say you're building a startup and you're the only engineer, of course. But otherwise, if you're, let's say, a team of many software engineers, I would say you should avoid it. But just curious, did you have such experience?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few cases where I've worked alone. I think there's like pros and cons. For a short while, it's kind of fun, right? You don't need to synchronize with anyone.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, but I also I guess it's like different kind of personalities. I'm also this kind of person who I like kind of discussing stuff. Like, okay, I have this idea. What do you think of this idea?
You like to bounce ideas.
Yeah, bouncing ideas, and then obviously, as you said, it works if this other people or other person is in the same context as well.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think in our current team, we also kind of try to have it this way that we generally try to minimize the parallel things and try to work more. Everyone try to keep this context basically, so that everybody, not maybe everybody is within the full or context of everyone else, but there are like these groups kind of that there's like at least 2 or 3 guys that have
inside the team
who kind of have this context, and you can then, if you have these discussions, you can have those there, which is, of course, it's cool and nice, but sometimes it can be also that can also be a bit distracting, because like if you have too much of these discussions, then it kind of takes time away from your like actually everyone working on their own thing.
Cool. So let's talk about Wise. So you joined Wise after this consultancy. How did Wise impact your career, and how long have you worked in Wise? Let's start with that. Just put a context.
Yeah, so I worked in Wise, I think like 7.5 years, something like
7.5 years. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, it was. But the company changed a lot during this time, obviously. When I joined, I think it was like 60 people, maybe. Engineering was probably like a dozen or so.
About 1,000 engineers, right?
Yes.
More or less. Okay.
Yes. So I think it was like, in the beginning we had one stand, basically. All engineers.
Right.
And there were actually no teams, which for me was actually strange, because even in my consultancy, we really try to always build these teams and sell the teams to the customers, and we believed really in this team as a unit to be as a really effective way of doing things. And then when I joined Wise, I thought like, oh, what's going on? There are no teams. There are some PMs, but they're kind of separate. And then there are like these engineers who are like doing the stand-ups with the whole engineering. And then even if it's like 12 people, it kind of sort of works. But I'm not able to keep the same context problem. Yeah, I don't have the context of most of these 12 people. So they can talk during the stand-up, but for me it's mostly like not so relevant. It's like noise almost.
But let's say by the way, I didn't know that when there were around, let's say, 12 engineers and you were there, you had like one single stand-up.
Yeah, for
that's
a
a
while.
cool fact.
For a while it was, but I think relatively quickly we then switched into like those initial teams.
Right. But would you say that having initially this global stand-up in a big scheme of things was effective? Because let's say I can guess, and maybe you can reflect on it, my guess would be that it helped you to be flexible where you allocate resources. And since the domain was still evolving, it was too early to split because, well, kind of delayed the split because things moved so fast that it was faster to just kind of work as a global unit and work on the most important things. Or maybe you can reflect on this one.
Yes,
unit.
I mean, probably, yes, it definitely has some kind of upsides as well with this setup. Maybe I think the size was already pushing those benefits. So I think we're pushing the limit.
So let's say 12 is kind of the limit. More.
Yeah. So now I think I haven't quite been in that similar situation, but I would say like if I would now start like a company and first, okay, you have this 5 engineers or whatever, and then you have more and more. I'm not sure if I would push it to 12 and still keep a single team.
Right.
But it depends, I guess. Yeah, it depends like how stable you kind of are, or how you see already how you can split it up. Make it easier.
Did you feel when you joined? There's a concept of psychological safety, right? Like how you feel in the team. Can you take risks? Do you feel at ease? Yeah. How did you feel being like a bit larger team? Do you feel you can be yourself and just express your opinions and ideas? How was it? This culture?
Yeah, I think in general, of course, I think the culture was really like about valuing high transparency and trust and safety and all those things, and no like hierarchy. All those things I think were there already then.
So it helped in us, like those core values.
Yes, and this empowerment also, that if you have a thing that you need to kind of you want to solve, then you can just do and solve it. I think those all those things were already there, and I obviously I really like those. But it's also interesting that I wouldn't say that like these ideas were like unique. Then like I came to Wise, which was like TransferWise at the time, and then I was like, oh wow, it's like I've never seen this. I think it was very similar to actually what we previously tried to build in our consultancy company. There we tried to have the setup where like everybody would feel as owners. We tried to involve everybody in like just making decisions for the company. We had like every week we had this whole company meeting where we discussed different company like management topics and things, and people could volunteer and stuff. We really tried to already there build this culture of like empowerment and so on. But obviously it was for kind of outsourcing companies hard first, because in the end you still everybody goes into your kind of customer teams, customer organizations. And then the other thing, obviously, I mean, we had very small company, it was like 20 people or something like that. And
it was not a product company
from
the start, so the dynamics was
yes. So I think what Wise managed to pull off, and what really impressed me, was actually managed to keep these ideas even as it grew into like whatever 2000. And as I see, as much as I hear from people, it's still like these values and ideas are still there even today. Now it's like 4,000 or something.
Can you talk? Now we're slowly starting to talk about the product engineering. I want this to be, let's say, the crux of our discussion, even though I very much like all the detours and the context we were setting before, because it's all connected, kind of. Let's say, can you, maybe the good way to start would be if you could explain what is or was, maybe just on a historical context, when you were product engineering culture in Wise, but what it actually meant to be a product engineer at Wise, and how it affected you personally.
I think there's for me, there's like this how to think about like being a software engineer. There's like during this, you could think of this path as a kind of having these different milestones. So the first milestone is basically like, okay, how can I kind of solve this problem in whatever way, just get something working. That's when you're maybe new in software engineering, like I was like new. That was my only goal, like get something working. I don't care how ugly it was. I got it working. Here's the thing. The screen pops up. I'm done. I'm happy. So that's the first milestone. And then after that is, you kind of like, but how can I make it in a nicer way so that it's like maintainable and the code looks good and I'm really
still focusing on tech, but making it nicer.
So still tech, but now it's like this craftsmanship stuff. So how can I be like kind of really proud of my work?
That's a second stage.
And then after that is basically how can I in a simplified way, even you could say like, how can I do less work? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually software is actually like not a good thing. The less software you have, the better,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is the kind of the highest aim there, and then yeah, for like I think you can look at it this path as a kind of also like a kind of continuum where you have like on one end is like engineer, and then on the other end you say like now you're a full product engineer, and I think there is also like basically in the beginning like you're more focused on your code, getting the stuff done, then you're more interested also like okay, how does it get into production,
right?
What do I have to do maybe inside the organization, talk to other people, teams to push it out to solve problems even outside the code sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you have this, okay, now I did it, but did it actually solve some problem, or what now happened with this thing that I delivered to the world? Is someone using it? All that stuff.
Would you say that culture-wise was this pushing to the far right of the gradient, where you're product engineer and you are actually encouraged to own let's say the core KPIs, customer KPIs that you're responsible for? So let's say if you're developing landing page, you would be responsible for the conversion, right? Conversion rates and the whole funnel pipeline. Was it like that? If you could
Yes,
reflect in
basically
wise.
yes. Yeah, I think the kind of in a go to like sometimes simplified sense, I think this product engineer could in a way say that okay, it's like engineer plus kind of this product manager in one person, kind of, which I think in some companies, in some cultures, in some industries, like I think Toyota has this, like I don't remember, like engineer role who is basically hitting both the tech or the engineering side and also the product. One single person, which is kind of in some ways sounds really cool, because then it's one person, all of this is in one head, so they can kind of put all of it together in the most optimal way. But obviously the other side is like it's very challenging role to be to be able to do both of those things.
Let's say it will work only if you have a full buy-in from the whole company, and the company from the top leadership supports this, right? Because if there's no support from the top, then it's very hard to implement it in practice.
Yes, I think of course this kind of product engineering, I think it's very connected to the organizational culture overall. Yeah. So like I think with engineering you can have this craftsmanship and stuff inside like this kind of sealed oasis or kind of sealed environment that during the development we're super agile, we do XP and all awesome stuff,
but forgetting about the customer.
And then we deliver it. We can even do it's like deliver very frequently and stuff.
Continuous delivery, right?
Continuous delivery, but
not getting my feedback.
Output basically. We deliver output features very efficiently, nice, but what happens to it is like then it's kind of wider organizational context. Yeah.
So it's a kind of efficiency versus effectiveness, right?
Yes.
You can be very efficient pushing the software out, even as you said, with best practices, continuous delivery, TDD, tests, everything. But then if you fail to close the feedback loop, where you don't get the feedback from the customer, and you as engineer are not owning that process, you have a risk of pretty much falling into the waterfall, right? Now that it's owned by some other people, and then you have some other departments thinking about it, and then you will eventually get back the feedback loop, but it's going to be very slow.
Yes, like so the big essence is waterfalls too.
In essence, you're not you're doing continuous delivery from the local perspective, but again, you're not continuously learning, right? And that's important one. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. And by the way, I think the ideas that you just described, they are written in your blog post that I read on your Medium. It's called, what is it called? Listeners can find it.
The Medium.
On product engineering, what you described, the gradient.
Yes. It's there as well.
It's there, yeah.
I mean, I think most of those ideas probably.
Yeah. I shared it in Hacknam as well for people to read because I actually really like the blog post. Yeah. I want to also touch on how product engineering is related to the company structure and structure in teams. We discussed it right before the podcast recording a little bit when you just came here, that it has very interesting dynamics, right? How, I mean, in startups, it's naturally easier to do product engineering because maybe, well, the company is small, less people to talk to, the more company grows, and also depending on the field, right? If it's a fintech, if it's medical tech, I worked in medical tech, a lot of compliance, a lot of processes. So now we have a gradient. So we have like small teams which can maybe change fast, and then we have these big companies or starting to get bigger with heavy compliance. What's your reflection on how it can affect product engineering principles for engineers, and how to, and then the next question, which is even more important, how to try to maintain product engineering principles as you grow as a company, and when naturally the stakes are higher, right? Like amount of responsibilities, compliance, it only gets bigger and higher. The pressure is higher. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah.
And maybe you can just share like your experiences or examples. It doesn't have to be like full blown analysis.
So I think it's kind of logical, right? That if you're like a small company, then you don't have much to lose, right? You can take more risks basically. Because anyway, if you don't take risks, then you'll probably won't be successful anyway. So it's fine. It's easy to justify that. But then the more successful you become, the harder it becomes to justify that. Maybe you should take risks.
To justify experimenting.
Yeah, experimenting. I think there's also like this kind of probably it's like just very natural that like as you grow and bureaucracy also kind of grows. So the number of because every time you kind of fail on something, it's very easy to say, okay, let's do postmortem. Okay, so what did we miss? Let's add this step into the process, or let's add this rule to the process, and then over time it become heavier and heavier because, but this also slows you down basically. Yeah. So I think it's very natural that over time you kind of, even if the beginning you are very like this generative organization, then there's this bureaucracy thing that just grows and grows inevitably. So I think, I don't know. I mean, it's like ongoing fight, I think. And
which you have always keep in mind. Right?
Yes, you have to always keep in mind. And I think one way how to kind of manage that is through leadership. I think leadership understands this, and they know that there's this risk of rising bureaucracy, and then they try to kind of keep under control and really still enforce promote basically those ideas of autonomy, empowerment, and trust. Then I think it can work.
I so much agree with you. I think leaders not only have to like keep it in check, they have to actively promote, because it could be also that people who are, let's say, lower in the organizational structure, they might think that, yeah, let's work like I worked in another big company. And they might start setting this local structures, for example, in their team, that engineers don't have to talk to customers, or engineers don't have to understand customer problems. Product manager will do it. And it's also the goal of engineering leaders and like the whole leadership, right? Layer from the very top, starting from CEO, CTO, and then all the way going down. So it's kind of fractal to enforce and promote the product engineering culture, right? And if it's not happening, it's very easy to lose this. And it can be lost even not necessarily from the top leadership, but even from the let's say from the bottom.
Yeah.
In the teams themselves, just because they will not know otherwise, or they might not know. And if leaders don't actively talk about product engineering, well, then teams will build it maybe in a waterfall way, because that's seems to be more optimal or efficient. Let's say. Right? It's more efficient that engineers don't talk to customers or think about product, right?
Yes.
That's what some people
It
might think.
seem, yes.
It may seem, yeah, in the short term, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think it's also you can have like different kinds of cultures, and I think you can be very successful as a business with different cultures. So I think that is also like something that I sometimes when you're inside these organizations, it feels like it's almost like a human right that this democracy and empowerment, autonomy, I must have these.
Yeah.
While actually, like, it's like companies are about making like profit and then serving their customers, right? And serving the mission. Yeah, but so if it happens that empowerment, autonomy are the best ways to do it, then yeah, that's good. But theoretically, there's probably depends. You can do achieve this kind of similar result with different approaches. So
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. And to be honest, let's say I can imagine engineering processes and culture, let's say in NASA, looks different. All right, values and principles in NASA for engineers is very different from startup, which has nothing to lose, right? And that's for me, it comes down to yes, that every company can and maybe should define its values and principles, how it works, the operating mode. And of course, they can change over time. I recently actually wrote a blog post about it called Values, Principles, and Practices for engineering teams. I wonder, so you worked well in different companies, right, in agencies, and then in Wise, where it was very heavily leaning towards product engineering. Then you were VP of engineering in Clean Kitchen. Then Aurora, I guess, or before that, I don't remember. And then now Inback. Right?
yes.
Would you say that values and principles in all these different companies were vastly different? Like, what were very common things and what were different? Maybe you can reflect a little bit.
Yes, I think it's of course the actual values I think were different in each of those companies.
Actual values. So starting from the core values.
The things that actually were people were following, not the ones that like I don't know
right.
are on the website.
Yes.
On the website, all the companies have exactly the same values. Customers are most important, and everybody's like autonomous, and then they're empowered, and so on.
Let's call them de facto values.
Yeah.
So those are de jure, those that are on the website, but de facto you say we're different.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I guess in practice, probably like there's like these outside forces probably also, or the context where the company or organization is functioning is also influences probably what you can do or what you can't do. Like for example, I don't know, if you have if your business is successful because you have good relationships with your partners, well, maybe you don't have to be that good at like whatever it's product engineering. You just have to be better than your competitors.
Right. Like if let's say you're B2B and
it depends. Yeah, what's your domain?
B2B, by the way,
basically
another beast.
Yeah, so if all your competitors are even worse than you are, you don't have to be like super agile and like very adaptive and stuff. Just better than they are. Yeah.
Right.
Until someone new, of course, comes in. That's always the risk.
Right. You know what was interesting? So I just want to reflect on this. Wise was my first company, right, that I joined. Like that I started to work professional, right? Before I was in university, so I was coding a lot, and but Wise was the first company. And the interesting thing is that Wise is very heavily product engineering. It's all about product engineering culture, and for a good reason. Like Wise had to innovate and to push this to the limit. That's why it survived and now is a successful company. But what was interesting for me, I assumed that every company is the same. I was naive. I was, junior engineer back then. And I thought every company is the same. And maybe those listeners who are, let's say it's your first company, just know that every company is different. And maybe the first, you'll not be afraid to say advice I would give before, if you consider going to other company, check its values. but try to understand these values not by exactly reading their website. Well, of course, read the website, but even better, just try to grab some engineer you can find and have lunch with him, and just talk with them, like what it is actually like working in this company. I don't know, Ürgo, if you would agree with that.
Definitely, yes.
Because as you said, and I cannot agree more, every company has different values, like de facto values. Starting from what CEO believes in and the senior leadership to all people in the company.
And I think, yes, definitely, like, and try to find someone who is not very close to the hiring pipeline where you are in, basically, because they are very interested in showing you maybe the more positive things. But just just ask, okay, can I talk to like some random engineer or product manager?
I agree.
Yeah.
I would even, by the way, I think the same advice applies within the company. Let's say if senior leadership, let's say CTO, and let's say it's a big company already. Let's just model it. 200 people. Well, let's even go further. 200 engineers working in a big company, like 400 people working. I think the best thing the CTO can do to probe really what's going on in engineering culture is not talk to middle managers or the team leads, tech leads of those teams, because they will try to show the best, right? Like our team is amazing, things are really well, but just try to have random lunch with any engineer, and trust me, he will rant or she about everything, like what's going wrong, what doesn't work. And this will be very unbiased and true and raw. And I think, by the way, Harsh, who is still CTO in Wise, and I worked in Wise when Harsh already joined. Harsh was doing that. I remember, and now I understand why. So Harsh was having one-on-ones with engineers, and I remember, when I had one-on-one with Harsh, I was saying about things that I didn't like, and he was actively listening. And when you feel that you are being listened to by CTO, you keep talking because you're like, okay, I can affect something here. And I just thought it's very important once you grow in your career, always, and let's say you become CTO and the company or VP or could be other levels. It's fractal, right? Depends on the size of the company. To never lose touch of what's actually going on de facto in teams, because teams teams actually deliver things continuously. That's true. Cool. But let's say we talked about these values principles in different companies, but which over time and right now, which values and principles you consider essential to you? And maybe and as adjacent to that, which skills and knowledge that you acquired you consider essential for you? Probably not the latest JS framework, right? But something else. So I'm interested about these core things that you consider essential to you.
I think one key thing, and I think it still goes back to this product engineering as well, and this continuum. One key thing I think for engineers is like that being this kind of active in your job, not just like waiting, like, okay, just give me the requirements and then I will implement them. And actually also, by the way, like this word requirements, I think nowadays there's less of it, but years ago it was all like requirements, right? But what is a requirement? Nobody knows actually what are requirements. So I think the key thing is to be active to pursue, like if you see something should be done in a different way, then like you as an engineer, you should also be not kind of doesn't like I don't know, waiting in okay, I'm here in engineering, I'm gonna wait until stuff gets to me and then I'm gonna do my engineering thing. And you should proactively kind of reach out and suggest ideas and stuff. And
right.
Yeah.
Would you say it starts with understanding which problem you're solving deeply?
Yes. So definitely, that's like understanding the like what's the product, who are the customers, So because the more you kind of know about those things, the better decisions you can make. Because otherwise, if you don't know about those things, and you have autonomy still, just okay, I can choose how much time I invest into this task or that improvement, but I have no idea. Like I don't know how valuable this is what I'm working on right now. But if I know, okay, like this is like a feature which is kind of nice to have, like it's not going to impact any customers or anything, I'm okay to spend probably like half a day on it. But if it seems it's going to grow bigger, then okay, I don't want to spend that much time. Probably I should already like do this, go with the simpler solution, or just maybe ditch it and try to do something else.
Ürgo, your words are honey to my ears. I cannot agree more. One thing we do, and again, I don't want to promote too much. I'm not here to sell Pactum, but in full disclosure, I work in Pactum, and at least one practice that we introduced, and I really like it, is when we solve Epic, right? It's the first responsibility, and I wrote a little. We have a one-pager of our values, principles, and practices. And in one of the practices point on how we deal with epics, where I described to you we work in pairs, etc., we have a point where we write, first and foremost, we have a principle and value that we own things end-to-end, and we understand from problem to definition. And the same goes on the practice level. In the epic, the pair needs to deeply understand what they're solving. And they have to focus on the problem. They don't have to be married to one solution. They can switch it during the epic development if they need to. But the most important thing that we really understand what they're solving. And it goes fractal, right? You can understand it on a shallow level. Yeah, we are fixing this thing, or we're introducing this feature, but you should go even deeper. You have to understand how it impacts your users, right? And then later on also even advise a team on what would be the next action steps to get feedback, for example. Will it work or not? Or what you should go next. So having end-to-end ownership. And I like how you said it, to be active engineer, to be engaged, not to be passive. And it's super important. I really like this one.
Yeah. I think it's like this product engineering thing for me. It's kind of interesting that, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been in this business so long, then the engineering side, I think it's getting less and less important, and the product side is more important. So now I think for a product engineer to be impactful, actually you should invest more and more into becoming, not basically you could say becoming this product manager person, almost yourself, like building those skills, those muscles, exactly the same thing that a product manager needs to have.
Yeah.
You will, as a product engineer, also benefit on all of those. And then the engineering side, yes, that is still needed. It's this foundational thing. But of course, there are some exceptions, some domains, I think, where you need to have this deep technical knowledge as well, and it's very valuable.
Yeah.
But majority, I think, of the products in this, that are around us, there's not so much like this deep technical, some genius algorithms or stuff like that. Usually, so it has to work, and it has to work, has to scale, and so on. But a lot more, I think, in this the value that you can bring into products.
I have a story to share, and then we will move to next topic, and maybe the last one. But I think it's very important, relevant one. But going to, I really like how we said, you want to be impactful, and you can do it by honing this product manager or product engineering muscles, right? And one story I wanted to share is that we had Euronews journalists attending Pactum recently, and I had why I mentioned this because there was a lady who was from Euronews, and we had a random chat in the kitchen. I was just near my desk, and I was in the kitchen, and then we discussed software engineering, and we discussed LLM and AI, generative AI, maybe a hype, but also how it will disrupt the industry. And she said one thing. She said, "Well, I think software engineers will be the first people to go, right?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." I said to her, Well, what I think, for sure, it will automate your tasks. Let's say it will, for now already, if you know, there's a framework called v0.dev by Vercel, where you can prompt things and it will generate React components for you. So it's all already happening now. And of course, they will automate some parts of your development. But your main job as product engineer, software engineer, is to really you are a problem solver, first and foremost. You need to understand, and your impact is in solving business problems. And you need to know a lot about it, end to end, from the business, your domain, to your customers, and then to all the engineering details from front end to back end. So I said to her, and why she asked, by the way, because she said, I'm worried about my daughter because she's in computer science major right now. And I said, look, you don't have to be worried. I think engineers are not going anywhere. But just maybe tell your daughter that, she might want to consider to like honing her skills in this product engineering realm, and she will be very successful. And she will leverage these AI tools, and they are not enemy to her. She will just be more productive, but she will still have to put them together and be the person who is responsible to understanding what to do actually, what problems to solve for customers, or what to build next. So why I'm mentioning this, because I wanted your perspective on what do you think about the generative AI's impact for us in software engineering industry and how it relates to product engineering. So what's your take on it?
Yeah.
What would you say to this, daughter of this Euronews lady that I met?
I think even before this AI stuff started, I would have said that like engineers are of course valuable, but if you are strong in product, if you're strong in selling things, and maybe selling also in a wider sense, I think selling your ideas, communication, like explaining why, or also understanding the problems, all those things. I think this is like where you should also put your main effort in. And of course, I don't know, this AI stuff is like, there's different ways, I guess, how to look at it. One way is that, yes, it's going to disrupt everything. It's going to be something totally new after that. Or the other way is that it's just like another kind of iteration. Okay, yes, we had like
of automations, right?
Yeah, so we had like those kind of, I don't know, like we had this assembly language, and then you had like higher level languages, and then this one is just, it also helps to build even more complex things, but also I think the appetite for complexity also grows, because we also want to have those more complex things, and now everybody can have those more complex things.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it becomes like this kind of all-encompassing like, general AI, then of course it's the end of everything. Yeah. Humans will just be consuming YouTube and social media, right? But before that, it's still like be there.
How has it affected? How generative AI has affected you personally? And I mean you professionally in your career so far. Have you used any tools? Are you experimenting with something? Are you considering to experiment with something?
Yeah, I mean, we use Copilot currently. Copilot.
Oh, Copilot, sorry.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it. I mean, I haven't heard how you said it, but of course we also use Copilot. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's obviously like daily. I use that daily, and I like that.
Do you use also now that the integrations with, VS Code or IntelliJ, where it actually tells you about references, right, in your code, and it can analyze that?
Right? Yes, I used this inside IntelliJ.
So you're actually prompting Copilot?
Yeah, it's like, especially, I mean, I found that there's certain things that it helps me really a lot, like
tell me.
This kind of boilerplate stuff, especially when I have to do the same thing again, or similar things, but not quite the same thing. So I do less copy pasting nowadays, I found. So it's like a smarter
Uh-huh.
copy paste sort of for me.
Gotcha.
In some ways.
Are you using, because I'm exploring, I'm curious to explore it more myself. And I have to extent, but I want to push it even further to experiment leveraging Gen AI as much as possible to increase the feedback loop in a TDD cycle, red green refactor.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you're in the first step, right? You want to write a test, and you would write a prompt. Please write me a test to do. Then your test is what? Red, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you go implement it. But the cool thing now, of course, you'll verify the test. You'll see if it's actually what you want, right? And then during implementation phase, you don't have to be afraid to tell, let's say AI hallucinates. So what? If it hallucinates and you have a super complex algorithm, your test will fail because you have a test, right? So I figured that maybe being efficient and you could say effective in this red-green refactor loop with AI could be really beneficial. At least this is one realm where I want to experiment. Have you used it in this specific context?
Yeah, so I don't know. For me, it's like sometimes it's depends on the problem. Sometimes at least I feel that I'm really fast writing code, so auto completion, all that stuff. So I'm fast.
Right.
Writing the prompt seems so it's like too slow.
Yeah. Got it.
But it depends on some problems. Like for me personally, like writing some algorithms, it's really annoying. I have to really think hard, and
So that's where you use Gen AI.
yeah. So I have used it in some cases where like, oh, I need to do this algorithmic thing, sort of, and then I just so I have some tests, and I just tell it like, okay, just generate the code now, and it generates some random ugly stuff, and then I tell it, oh, make it more like functional.
Right. But the cool
like,
thing is that you have a safety net of tests.
Yeah.
It gives you confidence, right? And
Yes.
without this would be impossible.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is just one maybe takeaway for me personally, maybe for listeners as well. But I think being very good at testing, and let's say I will not go into TDD dogma. I mean, I follow TDD. I like it in, let's say, 95% of cases. And again, TDD, many people think that TDD is about unit tests. I mean, you can apply TDD on all levels of tests, right? You can ask it to make me API level test, or you can first start with API level test, or integration test, component test, unit test. You can apply it on different level of hierarchy. It's fractal, but now you have a feedback loop. Once you have an assertion or a test that is red, or even is green, let's say it's already there, and you are changing the code with AI, you make sure you will not have regressions, right? Or that your code works. And this confidence is so important, especially with Gen AI, where hallucinations happen.
Yes. Definitely, yes. Yeah.
We had an interesting case recently. We had to, introduce our own enum for country codes. It doesn't matter that we didn't want to put any libraries. So we just asked AI to generate. And it generated country codes, but it hallucinated in the middle. And now you can imagine you have 300 lines of code. Yeah. And it actually hallucinated in the middle. Like it messed up some country code. And no one noticed until recently, where I think I actually asked the person, can you add a test? And you could ask, well, how do you make a test for enums? Yeah. But I think we had a map of enums or something. We could deterministically loop over those enums and double check something. I will not go into details. But the idea is that, folks, be careful when you use Gen AI to generate massive file, which needs to be correct. Either make sure you have a test to catch it, or double check yourself, whatever your, let's say, feedback loop is to give you confidence. Never rely on Gen AI blindly, so to speak. Just know that it's a tool that helps you, but it doesn't give confidence by default. You have to ensure.
I think definitely. Like I agree. In my experience, at least with at the current stage where it is at, I think it maybe allows you at some point to remove this hard thinking.
Right.
I'm really not a fan of this hard thing where it's like, I have to think like the sequels like statement, how to make it like, and it avoids that. But then you always have to, of course, like verify everything with creating that link. But that's often easier than I think. Also, trying to think if you already have something there. Okay, now I can look if it's the right thing, it can be optimized, but I have like the starting point already.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess let's. I wanted to say let's wrap up, but I want to ask you about the last thing. Maybe it will be a teaser. Maybe we'll have a round two sometime, a second podcast in a while. But I want to ask you because I'll share a personal story. That's where you affected me a lot. Is on the topic of domain-driven design. So how the story goes, right? I mean, I started as junior engineer in Wise. I knew very little. I knew about OOP, classical OOP. I knew about different things, but I was not yet exposed to domain-driven design ideas, tactical patterns, strategic patterns. And I saw when I was reading some code or talking to you or other people, smart engineers in Wise, I was like, they talk about some things that I don't quite understand. And I remember once we had a chat, maybe in the kitchen or something, and I said, so Ürgo, I keep reading and I see in the code base there's this reference to DDD or domain-driven design. Can you tell me about it? And you gave me a recommendation to read a book by Scott Millett. It's called Domain-Driven Design, Principles and Practices of Domain-Driven Design, I think something like that. And the tactical and strategic patterns. Right? It talks about starting from strategic patterns, how do you think about your domain, subdomain, how do you split? And then about tactical patterns, things like value objects, entities, how you make sure you make things immutable, different layers, service layer, domain layer, repository layer, and all the dynamics around it, right? Event sourcing, CQRS. But why I'm mentioning this, I mean, I consumed this book like from end to end, page to page. And then I actually browsed through many repositories in Wise just in my free time. And then I started to see things. I was like, okay, I understand why core business logic is separated from infrastructure complexity, right? Why we don't have accidental complexity here. Or then vice versa, I saw some really shitty code and I understood, we have a service dynamic domain model, and we need to isolate this and this. It gave me almost like a pair of glasses with which I could see in a completely different perspective and level. But can you comment why I wanted to mention that? So first of all, thank you. Thank you for telling me about that book and giving me advice. But of course, DDD itself is not a silver bullet, right? You have still to think and that's actually the whole point of DDD. There are no silver bullets and you have to think and know your domain, right? And then it goes about how do you separate accidental complexity from inherent complexity. That's if I could summarize DDD. But how DDD, did it play a significant role in your career and the knowledge in DDD, or how would you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we in the beginning you mentioned this design patterns book, then domain-driven design was definitely another kind of big event in my kind of career.
You read the Eric Evans, right?
Yes, original, yes. And then obviously I wanted to try it out everywhere, maybe in places where you shouldn't try it out.
But that's how you learn, right?
Yeah.
Same, by the way. I went into the same trap.
Yeah.
I started to try it everywhere.
So, yeah, it was definitely, and I think, like, for me, one interesting thing out of this DDD is that when you read those books, then typically it seems like, okay, there's this domain expert, and then the engineer talks to the expert, and then the expert is using some kind of language, and then this engineer, goes and puts that language into the code, and then it's awesome. But what I've seen in practice is that often there's no domain expert, actually. There's like experts on different areas. And then you could have you have this product manager, but they could also be technical, or they could be very close to your already existing kind of language, which is maybe also pretty technical again. So I think it's often like, it's not just like an engineer listening and then writing using this language in their code, but also the other way, like suggesting bringing things into the domain language, maybe borrowing from other domains, which are like as a metaphor, like e-commerce or whatever that people are more familiar with.
Yeah.
Borrowing ideas from there, or just like naming things, like, okay, I don't know, maybe like in our current domain, we have like this rental business, and there's this thing when you can return your device that you have rented. There's this time period, yeah, and then how do we call this period? Oh, that's called renewal window.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of things that how to name this concept so that everybody understands it in the same way. You don't need to repeat. Okay, this is this thing that does this thing and that thing. Or like just use this name here.
So it's like very efficient encoding of information into your language, which indeed leads to ubiquitous language. Right?
And I think that's the thing. I think it goes two ways. It's not just engineers, not just a passive participant, but actively also coming and suggesting and bringing things into the language.
By the way, I cannot agree more. And I think the first person who affected me, who told about the importance of creating metaphors and then embedding the concepts and logic into the metaphor was Kent Beck. I think I read it like, I don't know, like 6-7 years ago, and I was blown away. I was like, yeah. And then it all connected when I read the book and metaphors and what you just said now. I think it's almost, I would say, underestimated skill for engineers to come up with good metaphors and good domain modeling, right?
Yeah.
And I find for myself that this is one of the most critical skills for a software engineer, to be able to, because what it does pretty much, the metaphor helps you to simplify logic, to you reduce the cognitive load when you need to think about something. And this is very valuable.
Yes, and I think it's exactly this cognitive load, and I think, so there's like this interesting thing is that, what is simple or what is easy to understand, in some ways, if you have this code that is like just one big method, and then line by line by line, there's just the whole logic of this algorithm is in this one single file or class or whatever. That's really simple. You just start and you read it through. And now, when you introduce those abstractions or new concepts, it allows you to create layers and split it apart. But it makes it easier to understand if people understand what you're now introducing, and that's where these metaphors are powerful, because if you bring this metaphor in, obviously I know what is like an order, more or less, because I've used e-commerce, or I know what is a fulfillment, and then you can use that existing knowledge to understand, okay, if I'm taking this existing knowledge in, and then sure, I now understand what it's supposed to do here, even without going into the details.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's really important. Cool. And let's wrap up with a very fast Q&A. So I'll ask you questions. They're not going to be tricky questions, simple ones. Don't worry. I'm not going to catch you on something. And you will just answer with 1 or 2 words. Okay?
Okay.
Let's try it out. So your favorite language?
Like programming language?
Yeah, your favorite programming language.
I'm still a Java guy. Yeah.
Java. Your least favorite language?
That's a hard one, actually. I don't know, PHP maybe?
That's fair enough. Yeah. Your editor of choice that you use every day?
IntelliJ.
IntelliJ. Do you practice TDD?
Sometimes, yeah.
Cool. Do you test front-end logic?
It's interesting. Well, my default is actually no. Not automate test.
Right. What if front-end logic is more involved? Let's say it has already actually some, like, let's say, domain logic, and should be in front-end, let's just imagine.
Okay, so that's, if there's logic in the front-end, then I would test it.
Yeah, but you're not testing declarative, let's say, the components or the actual...
I would usually try not to have logic in front-end.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you prefer unit or integration tests?
That's a interesting one.
That requires another 1 hour of discussion, right?
Yeah. I mean, these days, I don't know, like integration test for me is a bit loaded.
Yeah.
For me, there's like unit level, and then yes, okay, you can have integration with certain things, and then there's component level.
Component level. Right.
These days, have become bigger fan of this component level.
And component level, just to give a maybe concrete example, would be, imagine you have a use case which starts with the API invocation, right?
Yeah.
Goes all the way down to service layer, database, and then with the API response. So the component layer testing would be for you in the test to invoke the API, right? I mean, to mock the server, but to invoke the API, and then let the logic go all the way through, and you would verify the response, right? This would be an example.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. By the way, in my experience, this is the level of testing which is the most potent if you have lack of tests. Let's say if you have lack of tests and you want to very fast increase the confidence of your surface area, start with component level tests, and then of course over time introduce unit tests where it makes sense. But component level tests is the best kind of cost benefit ratio if you have nothing. Let's say.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope to talk to you again. Let's have round 2 in some time.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Ürgo.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's.
I don't know how long it was now.